Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
The world doesn't always crack because of an earthquake. Sometimes it splits because of two hearts that choose to be honest. That morning was no different from any other, until a sentence shook the belief systems of millions of souls. Not because it was bitter, but because the truth is sometimes more surprising than a long-held lie. HYBE, the majestic fortress of BTS's glory, finally confirmed the rumor that had been blowing like a whisper of the night. Taehyung and Jungkook, not just partners on stage, but two names holding each other outside the spotlight. It was as if the sky had broken into silence. The fandom world stopped breathing. Time seemed to hold its steps. Was this real? Or was it just a dream that was too honest to be called fantasy? For years, their closeness had been framed under the label of friendship. Two souls who grew up together, laughing backstage, teasing each other on live broadcasts, and sharing hugs that looked too sincere for the camera. But the public had always rewritten the story with skeptical ink. They're only close because they're in the same group. But now, the truth stood in the spotlight like a main actor who had finally entered the main stage. HYBE said it in a voice that didn't tremble, but the public heard it like thunder. The confirmation not only explained the relationship, but also broke down the wall of silence that had been built high all this time. And in the middle of it all, Bang Si Hyuk, the figure known as the architect of BTS's eternity, looked speechless. Not because he didn't know, but maybe because not all truths need to be defended. Sometimes, silence is the highest respect for something too beautiful to be soiled by clarification. Since this rumor spread, the fandom has been divided into two camps. Those who believed from the start, and those who were afraid to believe because their love was too fragile to break. But now there is no more room for doubt. The truth has stepped out of the shadows. Taehyung and Jungkook are not just stories, they are poems that we have been reading in silence all this time. Social media exploded. Hashtags rose. Compilation videos of their closeness that were once called fan service are now replayed with wetter eyes with calmer hearts. Every look, smile, and touch now feels like an honest fragment of a love they've kept hidden between song breaks and backstage silences. But this isn't just about two hearts. It's about an industry that has dictated how love should be presented. It's about the public forgetting that idols are human too, and that hearts don't recognize contracts or cameras. The question arises: why now? Why should the world know about them while they're in the middle of their military service? Maybe because behind every goodbye there's room for confession. And behind every break there's time to be honest. Jungkook and Taehyung are no longer two names behind perfect choreography. They're now two souls challenging the boundaries of the old narrative, that love in K-pop must always be vague, must always be hidden. They've opened a door that's been locked, and no one knows who else will follow them out. But one thing's for sure, after this, the stage will never be the same again. For Bang Si Hyuk, this may be the loneliest chapter of his career. Not because he lost control, but because this time he chose to let the truth stand alone. And that, for a maestro, is the bravest decision. While the world asks, fans cry, and cameras try to capture every last quiver, Taekook, a name that once belonged only to fanfiction and teenage fantasy, is now a real entity. A life. A reality. A story. And we are all witnesses to the birth of a new era, where love no longer belongs only to the songs, but also to those who sing them. The story continues to infiltrate deeper, tracing the small ripples that began to spread to all corners of the entertainment industry. The days after the confession felt like a long echo of a confession that could not be silenced. One by one, responses began to emerge, from celebrities who spoke up, to international fan bases who held online discussion rooms, trying to weave meaning from the truth that had just been born. In the midst of it all, digital letters began to appear in online communities. Letters from ARMY who had been with BTS since pre-debut, from new fans who were touched by the honesty, and from those who no longer believed that love could live in this shadowy industry. But this time, the shadow became a sacred place that kept the love alive, far from cheap interpretations. I'm not disappointed, I'm touched. Because finally, someone dares to choose to be honest, not for popularity, but for themselves. That's what one of the most liked comments on a South Korean online forum reads. Words that may never make the headlines, but that ignite hope in silence. HYBE itself, although quietly turning off the interview tap, began to take careful steps. Products with Taehyung and Jungkook's faces began to be marketed again, this time not with the nuance of a fake friendship, but with a new narrative, authentic togetherness. Not a few called it a commercial move, but the public also realized, this is the point where capitalism and love meet, and this time, no one wants to look away. Meanwhile, from the quiet military barracks, two newspapers emerged to the public. One from Taehyung, one from Jungkook. Not an official statement, but a handwritten note that leaked like tears, silently and unstoppable. We have no intention of hurting anyone. We just want to live without hurting ourselves anymore. That sentence, in Taehyung's handwriting, written on shabby paper, inserted in a photo frame that was accidentally seen when a friend of theirs uploaded a moment of togetherness on a holiday. The world trembled again, not because of anger, but because empathy suddenly felt more important than any opinion. And in the midst of that storm, the narrative changed. From shocking confession to love triumphs over the system. From a feared scandal to a story to remember. As the new trainees under HYBE begin to practice again in the same studio, perhaps they will look at their reflections with a little more hope, that they too can be idols and still be human. That they can love and be loved without having to disguise themselves. And for Taekook, even though the world is not done talking about them, they finally don't have to explain who they are. Because the world has begun to understand that sometimes, love doesn't need arguments. It just needs the courage to exist. The sky is slowly clearing. Not because the storm has passed, but because two hearts have chosen not to hide anymore. I knew them through the screen. I fell in love with their music, not who was holding whose hand backstage. But that day I felt like I was losing my grip, not because I was disappointed, but because there were too many feelings coming at once. I rewatched their old videos, not to look for signs like many people do. I watched them because this time I wanted to see with new eyes. Eyes that knew that love was there from the start. I was just too afraid to call it that. I remember their V Live in 2019, which I used to think was just entertainment. Jungkook smiled too sincerely, Taehyung looked too deeply. I used to think it was just chemistry. Now I know it was the truth they hid better than anyone. And what made me cry the most? It wasn't their confession. It was how long they had to keep it. In a world where love has to be tailored to a comeback schedule. In a world where touch has to be approved by a manager. In a world where freedom is an illusion wrapped in fan signs and fan cams. They saved the only thing they could ever truly have, each other. I read the hateful comments and I understand. Not everyone is ready to accept that love can defy expectations. That a man can love a man and still be a role model. That Taehyung and Jungkook didn't crush anyone's dreams, they just stopped pretending to be someone else's. There's one thing that keeps ringing in my mind from Taehyung's interview years ago. I want to be loved for who I am, not for what you think I should be. Now I understand that it wasn't just a sentence. It was a plea for help whispered through the lens of a camera. And we have waited long enough for it to be answered. Amidst all the noise, one thing has become clear. The truth they let slip is changing not just the direction of the fandom, but the direction of the industry. Rumors are useless now. Speculation has lost its power. Because they have replaced rumors with honesty. And that is braver than anything. Epilogue. Meanwhile, in a quiet military barracks, two young men sit side by side. They no longer talk about the stage or the schedule. They talk about the future, about the day when they can walk side by side through the airport without having to keep their distance. The day when they can say I love her without making the world tremble. And maybe for the first time, they feel truly free.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.